The release of President Obama's FY 2011 budget projects a deficit of nearly $1.6 trillion, equivalent to 10.6% of economic output. I'm convinced that addressing ballooning debt is not only an economic issue, but there is also a moral component to this issue that goes to the heart of who we are as Americans. It has been almost 4 years since I first came to the floor of the House proposing an independent bipartisan commission to address unsustainable federal spending. The SAFE Commission, short for Securing America's Future Economy, would operate in an authentic and transparent way, holding a series of public meetings across the country to hear from the American people. It would put everything on the table: entitlements, all of the spending, and tax policy. One of the most authentic provisions of the SAFE Commission is to mandate for an up or down vote in the Congress. The establishment of fiscal commission by executive order that does not require Congress to vote on its findings is what we call a big hat, no cattle. A big hat used for political cover for elected officials who aren't willing to make tough choices in an election year. Simply put, a commission established through executive order will make it look like Washington is finally doing something to address runaway spending, but without the teeth to require action. It will amount to nothing more than another report collecting dust on the bookshelf. It will not make a difference. A real commission must be authentic, accountable, transparent. It must involve the American people. It must require legislative action. A commission through an executive order fails on all those counts. I want to be absolutely clear. I'm a fiscal conservative. I work with senior staff at the Heritage Foundation, a bastion of conservatism, among others, in drafting the SAFE Commission legislation. I believe the economy grows when people keep more of their hard-earned money, and my voting record reflects this belief. I do not favor tax increases. In fact, I would support a short-term moratorium on Social Security payroll taxes as the ultimate economic stimulus to put more of taxpayers' hard-earned money back into their hands so they can invest in the economy. This would cost less than a so-called stimulus and would create jobs. As sometimes happen around, our positions are staked out before the actual bill text is ever read. So I encourage my colleagues, especially on my side of the aisle, to actually read the SAFE Commission bill. It is a bipartisan process. The legislative text protects the minority by requiring a supermajority, 12 of 16 of the Commission's members, to be in agreement before any legislative recommendations are sent to Congress for an up or down vote. To say that this would bring about tax increases, it is wrong. The SAFE bill was carefully crafted to ensure a bipartisan process to protect the rights of the minority party. Given the enormity of the challenge, the Commission needs to be able to look at every component of our fiscal policy to fairly assess where we stand and how we can best move forward on a sound financial future. In looking at revenues, the legislative language is clear that any changes in the tax code must help simplify the system and stimulate increased economic growth and thereby tax revenue. But what no one is saying is by opposing the Commission concept altogether and failing to put forward any viable alternative, those who most adamantly oppose tax increases essentially ensure they will happen down the road. The issue is that if we don't do something now about the deficit, the debts that continue to mount at record levels will guarantee tax increases in the future. The longer it takes to address this issue, the more draconian the options will be when Congress is forced, which they will most surely be, to do to change course. I repeatedly challenged colleagues on both sides of the aisle who question the SAFE Commission to come up with another solution to the deficit and debt crisis that can pass Congress. Without a special process like the SAFE Commission, which is based on a successful federal-based closing process, I am convinced Congress will never put a mechanism in place to control government spending. Quite frankly, both parties have failed to face up to the entitlement challenges in recent years. Given the enormity of the country's financial turmoil, I remain convinced that the bold steps needed to control deficit spending will never be taken through regular order in Congress that is so political and controlled by special interests. Our entire political system is now so polarized but many only think in terms of red or blue ideology at the expense of our shared national interest. Time is growing short. If the lawmakers are serious about the debt and the deficit, issues that Americans are increasingly worried about, Congress will halt the budget gimmicks, the slick talking points, and muster the political will to have an honest conversation with the American people about where we are, where we're headed, and what changes need to be made to get back on track.